We should be live.
Oh, good to go?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025, and it's Howard County House Delegation meeting. So we have a quorum already. Let's go to our agenda. So the first on our agenda is talk about LBI. And do we have any discussions on the LBI? So if you have questions, please raise your hand. Otherwise, do we have a motion?
I would move that we move all of the LBIs as a group.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have Delegate Hill made the motion. Who seconded? Okay,
Me.
Delegate Guzzoni. So, Musa, did you write down?
Yep.
Okay, we have first, we have second, and so
So, Chiru,
yeah, let's vote.
There's a question.
Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to mention for anyone watching that this year's funding available for LBIs is extremely limited. And it is certain that we will not be able to fund every LBI or even probably a majority of them. So I just wanted to set that expectation for the delegation itself and for anyone who might be watching. Unfortunately, it's a very, very difficult year, but we will do our best.
Thank you, Delegate Watson, for mentioning that. By the way, we have our school superintendent here. We have a school board member, and let me just try to mention that. And Dr. Linfeng Chen. Just mention that, right? And then Jim Mallow, Andrew Chamberlain, Jackie McCoy are here. And thank you for being here. Then we have Maria Evans come from the county government as well. Then we have Mr. Barr and Mr. Brown here from the school system. Thank you.
I have a second question if no one else does.
Okay, so can you call a vote, Musa?
Wait, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Watson.
Since we have the superintendent on the line, it would be helpful, I think, to all of us to have a better understanding of the LBI that is in here, which I was a part of, that we put for the school system. So I'm just wondering if we can give him a minute to explain what that money would be used for and why it's needed.
Mr. Barr, can you go ahead? Yeah.
Mr. Brown, could you speak to that specifically? I can provide a broader, just really quickly.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Cornell Brown, Chief Operating Officer, here with Howard County Public School System. We are requesting support to fund a space adequacy assessment. The State of Maryland Public School Construction Program, the IAC, completed the facilities assessment of all school buildings throughout the state, looking at building conditions. But what they did not do was to evaluate how our buildings support our instructional programs, our administrative spaces, wraparound services. So what we would like to do is secure consulting services to complete that evaluation so that we can couple data that would look at how our buildings are performing from a space adequacy standpoint, so that we can further, outline the priorities for our capital program. So we'll have building condition data, how, deficient are roofing systems, mechanical systems, building systems in general. And we'll also have space adequacy deficiency data that we'll use to determine, how we would action a capital budget and capital program. So the assessment dollars is to bring consultants on board to assess all of our facilities and then present the school system with data that would drive our decisions on how we would lay out our capital program.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And Delegate Hill, you have a question?
Yeah, well, since the school system's here, if they could go ahead and talk to it as the preschool education center, theirs or someone else's? I don't know if that's Faulkner Ridge or if that's someone
Yeah.
else.
Yes, Faulkner Ridge. Yes, that is a project that is currently in design. Is there a specific question?
Right, so so that is for planning, or that's the design appropriation, or that's for
So we have funding in place to complete the design of the program space requirements. So we submitted our schematic designs to the state. So we're looking to complete the design process. So next January we'll be able to start construction. So we'll go out to bid, and then we award, pending board approval, contracts to start construction in January of 2026 and completion in 2027 for the 2027-2028 school year.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to recognize Senator Katie Hester is here as well. And do you have other questions? Otherwise, yeah, Musa, can you call the vote?
Delegate Hill moved to vote. Delegate Gazoni seconded. Is this just move all the LBIs as a batch? Chair Rue,
Yes.
Delegate Feldmark,
She is not here.
Delegate Gazoni,
Yes.
Delegate Hill,
Yes.
Delegate Terrassa,
Yes.
Delegate Watson,
Yes.
Delegate Ziegler.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. So we're going to move to the next item on our calendar, our agenda, HOCO 1425, Columbia Association Lease Requirement and Governing Document. So do we have any discussions? And do we have a motion?
I move favorable on the bill.
Second.
Okay, do we have any other discussion? Delegate Watson, please go ahead.
Just briefly, Delegate Hill, did we have any opposition on this?
We did not.
Okay.
I think that at the end of our discussion last year, we had, I think Delegate Feldmark had some questions about whether this would be precedent setting, and was informed that it would not be. And
Okay.
so we moved it out of full delegation last year, and it's in the same posture as
Thank
what we
you.
did last year.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? And Musa, can we call the vote?
Yes. Delegate Ziegler moved with favorable. Delegate Hill seconded. Chair Rue,
Okay, yes.
Delegate Gazoni,
Yes.
Delegate Hill,
Yes.
Delegate Terrassa.
Yes, and I just want to point out that Delegate Feldmark's on her way, so I know we can usually keep open those votes until she gets to vote on that.
Okay. Yes. Delegate Watson,
Yes.
Delegate Ziegler.
Yes. I apologize.
The motion carries favorable with favorable.
Okay, thank you. So we'll come back when Delegate Feldmark joins. Oscar vote for the other two. And so we're going to our bill discussion and voting. The first bill to be discussed today is HOCO 925. Delegate Hill, you want to start that?
Sure. Just sort of picking up, since we did not have a quorum present last week, this bill, which really arose out of an effort on multiple fronts to respond to pedestrian fatalities, specifically along Route 1, but also other places in Howard County, where we had, with state highways, had collaborated to increase signage, put in some pedestrian changes that have been in planning and now have been moved forward, decrease the speeding. We felt that if we're worrying about speed in this or other areas of the county where safety is an issue, that we should also follow the leads of Montgomery, Baltimore, and Prince George's County and enable the local jurisdiction to use speed cameras. So this essentially, as introduced at the time of our public hearing, would have introduced speed cameras at locations in Howard County as deemed appropriate by the local jurisdiction based on whether the state or local, the most recent state or local transportation assessment or net zero assessment had indicated that this was a high priority area. And then we had introduced, but and let me be clear, the most recent strategic highway safety plan or Vision Zero plan would define it as a high risk area or anywhere along Route 1 that the county deemed appropriate. We had introduced an amendment that did not get published at the time of the public hearing, which says, and I'll read it, any money used to fund deferred, no, I'm sorry, that's Delegate Feldmark's amendment that she wants to offer. So what was added was that the funds would be used after paying cost for the deferred maintenance. It would create a deferred maintenance fund for Howard County School System. So that was the essence of the bill as we discussed it last week. And we had some questions that were brought up that I believe the county is here to address. And Mr. Moriarty wanted to clarify my explanation. And I would also note that Delegate Feldmark has an amendment that she would like to offer.
Mr. Moriarty, you raise your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just Delegate Hill, would you like me to share my screen and show the amendment clarifying the
Yeah, please.
of the plan?
Yeah, from the fines collected by Howard County as a result of violations enforced by speed monitoring system placed in accordance with 21-809 B151 and 7 of the transportation article, any balance remaining after the allocation of fines under subparagraph 1, which is, paying for this, the program itself, shall be used to fund deferred maintenance work at Howard County Public Schools.
Any questions on this motion? No, this amendment? Mr. Moriarty, you raise your hand again, or?
Oh, sorry, that's still up from the previous.
Okay, Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I would like to, I would like to at least raise my amendment for discussion as they're sort of interrelated. I think they can, Mr. Moriarty can speak to if there would need to be any drafting adjustments for both of them to coexist. But, my amendment does two things. One is it sort of merges the speed camera funding streams. So we have existing speed cameras in school zones and then the new speed camera authorization that this bill would create. And there's a different restriction on the funding for the revenues that are generated from the speed cameras in school zones. From my conversations with the administration, and I know, I believe Ms. Arthurs is here, so she may want to speak to that, but for ease of administration and not having to keep sort of two sets of cameras running on different systems, this would combine them and say that the revenue generated could be used for pedestrian or highway safety programs or the deferred maintenance use, which the bill already specifies. So I think that's an important piece as we look at some of the areas where we've had these requests, especially on Route 1, where we've had a series of tragic pedestrian fatalities. I think we need to look at that as another need that this funding could support.
Thank you, Delegate Feldmark. So, Mr. Evans, do you have anything? I
Delegate
think-
Terrassa has had her hand up for a while.
Yeah,
Actually, my
but-
questions was for the county, just to hear what
Okay.
how that's being used.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, Mr.
Hi,
Evans.
Maureen Evans, representing the administration. Thanks for having me. And I will say two things. One, I did send an email yesterday that had some of the questions that have been provided by our Howard County Police Department. And also, if there was going to be discussion today, I wanted to see whether or not there could be opportunity next week to where an officer could both be present and then we could have the full answer, the full set of answers to the questions. There were some questions that were asked last week. Some of those answers were provided in the email that I sent yesterday evening, and then also questions received yesterday. So we wanted to be able to have all of those questions not only answered, have all the delegation members be able to review, and then have an officer present. So if there are going to be more questions generated from this discussion here, giving me the ability to take note of those and then work with both our transportation office and HCPD to make sure that we have all of the correct data for you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. So I think there are two amendments in front of us, and both from Delegate Feldmark and Delegate Hill. They're a little different, so maybe one way to think about it, maybe we can combine them together, or we just accept one direction.
And also, Musa, Mr. Jaffrey, can you also email those amendments if I could see? Because
Mr.
they were shared on the screen,
Sure.
but then they went away.
Mr. Jeffrey, can you send both amendments to
I can.
the
Yes.
county side?
Thank you.
And Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have one other question, just as we're looking at speed cameras in general, and the school zones specifically. And I wonder if either Mr. Barnes or Ms. Mallow could answer a question for us. I believe that since the school zones were established in statute, the school system has expanded the radius for its walking routes. And I'm wondering if, while we're looking at this, if there's an opportunity to sort of update to make those consistent.
So,
I can certainly speak to it unless the board member wants to jump in. Ms. Mallow, I saw you unmute.
So I'll begin and say that currently the walk zones are larger than they were 3 years ago. And in the fall of 2025, they will be reverting back to the zones that they were 3 years ago or prior or smaller. So high schools will revert to 1.5. Middle schools will revert to, I believe, 1 or 1.25, and elementary schools will be 1 or less.
thank you, Ms. Mallow. And any other questions answered from the school system?
Can I ask a quick follow-up, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair?
please go ahead.
And can someone confirm what the current radius is for existing school zones for the speed camera program?
I'm unable to answer that, so it would have to either come from the county or from operations.
Let me, may I?
Okay. Yeah, Delegate Hill.
Yeah, a couple things. I wanted to clarify what was stated last week, and I want to clarify that this is true that the current speed camera program has no installed speed cameras. They're moved from school zone to school zone as the need arises. Is that correct?
Yes,
That's
Okay. And so what we're talking about here are installed cameras. And Ms. Author, is there, aside from convenience, if this were to pass and the county decided to do this, or would they be under any obligation to roll it under the same contract that they're using for the roving? Would they be able or likely to do a separate bid for these cameras, which might end up coming to the same vendor, but would there be any obligation or efficiency in staying with the same vendor? Would you treat this likely as a different contract and bid it out?
Thank you, Delegate Hill. I'm not sure whether or not it would be required to be utilized by the same vendor for ease and efficiency. That could potentially be something that's done in both familiarity with services rendered. However, as to whether or not that would be a requirement to use the same vendor, I'm not sure, but I can follow up.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, if I
Yes,
may,
please go ahead.
since Ms. Arthur submitted question or answers to questions that were asked during last week's meeting, I'd like to read them aloud so that the public is aware of what those answers are, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, question 1. How are speed camera, red light camera, and general traffic violation revenues remitted on county versus state roads, that is to say, cited by Howard County Police Department versus being cited by state police? The response: we do not differentiate between county and state roads for automated enforcement tickets. All revenues from Howard County automated enforcement sites, including speed and red light camera, are remitted back to Howard County, and I assume that means directly. Regarding traditional traffic violations cited by police officers, both HCPD and state police, the fines are paid directly to the district court. As such, we are not privy to how the district court allocates or tracks revenues based on whether the citation occurred on county or state roads, and you may wish to contact district court for further clarification on their revenue differentiation process. And I think the point of that question, which I think was mine, is that we wanted to be clear because there was some concern about how we will be able to track revenue, that there is no intermediary like the money going to state and being pulled and then sent back to the county. It is remitted directly to Howard County. The second question was, does the department believe that the cameras would be helpful in decreasing speeding in areas of high risk for accidents, particularly with pedestrian and bicyclist injuries and mortalities? And the answer, yes. Speed cameras have been shown to be effective in reducing speeding in areas where they are deployed. Decreasing speeding is a critical factor in improving safety, particularly in areas with high pedestrian and bicyclist activity. While the majority of pedestrian collisions in Howard County investigated by HCPD are attributed to pedestrian error rather than driving fault, one pedestrian fatality in 2024 was linked to excessive speed. Additionally, we did not record any bicycle fatalities or serious injury collisions in 2024. Speed cameras can serve as a proactive measure to enhance safety and potentially reduce speed-related collisions in high-risk areas. Question 3. What is the system by which directed revenue can be tagged to ensure it goes to the targeted fund? For instance, our bag fee revenues are directed to a particular fund and specific uses. Response: payments for red light and speed camera citations are sent to separate P.O. boxes designated for each citation type. The system allows the county to track and differentiate revenue streams for red light cameras and speed cameras. Once operational costs for each program are covered from the initial revenue, the allocation of additional funds differs. Revenue collected from red light camera is directed to the Howard County Government General Fund. In contrast, additional revenue from speed camera is deposited into a dedicated account managed by HCPD. Spending from the speed camera account is restricted by the Howard County Code and may only be used for specific purposes outlined in the code. So I wanted to thank Ms. Arthur for those answers, and the chair for allowing me to read them into the record.
Thank you, Delegate Hill. So Delegate Teresa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, although maybe I should defer to Delegate Feldmark because part of it,
Okay.
to clarify what she was saying about the school zones being larger, is that what you were going to clarify?
Delegate Feldmark?
That was not actually why I had raised my
Okay.
hand right now. I don't know but just to answer or to
Sure.
address that point, Delegate Teresa, I don't know if Mr. Moriarty can
Okay.
confirm. I
Let's
believe
say
that
this, Delegate Teresa, right? So your question about the camera distance, does that impact the bill itself, or you just have question on the distance?
No. My question was in relation to Delegate Feldmark's statement that, or question maybe about whether the school zone allowed by law matches the actual walking route distance. And so, because sound like this, even when it goes back, it'll be back to like 1.25 miles. And I thought that the current cameras are only allowed to be used up to 1 mile away from. So maybe some clarification on that, but I didn't know whether her point was that that program should stay intact, like we should change that distance. So we know that anything within the school zone goes to the pedestrian safety issue.
Got it. Okay, I think, do we have any? I think that question probably from the county government side or HCPD.
or Mr. Moriarty, I think if you can confirm for us quickly, I believe it's in the existing authorization. It's just not in this bill.
Yeah.
Do you have that distance?
My understanding, looking at some publications from the State Highway Administration here, is that currently a school zone is a 1/2 mile radius around a school. And I can confirm that again for next week.
Okay. You got a nod and a thumbs up from the superintendent, so I think he agrees with
That's
that.
good enough for me.
So it's independent of the walking zone. It doesn't change because we changed the walking zone.
Mm.
Right, it's just fixed
Right,
it.
and my question was, is that as we're looking at expanding where speed cameras can go, should we look at that if the walking zone is greater than the current authority? But the reason I had raised my hand again was actually a question for Delegate Hill. I wanted to confirm if I heard correctly. I think you were saying that unlike the existing speed cameras, which are currently the county uses a mobile system to be able to cover more school zones with the existing with a smaller number of cameras, that you're envisioning this bill creating fixed site cameras. Is that correct?
Correct, although as you make the point, I don't think it's explicit within the language of the bill, but yes, the idea was the same kind of fixed cameras that we see in other jurisdictions.
Okay, and that was my question, was I didn't see that in the bill. I think as drafted, it would still be up to the county how they wanted to manage.
And I'm fine with that unless
Okay.
if this bill were to pass, if the delegation feels like it would be important to specify that there should be a fixed system, I'm fine with that. Either way, I would take that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Delegate Watson.
Thank you. I was one of the ones that was not here last week, so I don't know if this has been covered already, but it's I would like to get an idea of the scope of this in terms of the roads that are defined in that meet the criteria. Is there a map that shows us those roads? So that's one question. And then the second question is, I don't know if we've talked about projections of revenue that we would expect to see here, or what the revenue has been from the school cameras that we put in place several years ago. So those pieces of information I think I would need before I'd be ready to vote on this.
So first, I don't think we have a map yet. So we're trying, probably it will come back to the county government and the school system, say where do we need to install cameras? So we don't have that right now. And for the revenue part, I don't think we have that yet. We talked about that last time, but we have not get that information yet.
But I will say that was one of the questions that has been submitted. How much revenue has already been generated from the speed cameras? And I know last week we did define I think you did define what a highway was. I
Maybe
believe there
Mr.
was
Moore-
discussion.
Yeah, maybe Mr. Moriarty can go over that again.
I think you're on mute.
Mr. Moretti, can you, yeah,
Yeah, I'm just going to pull up the so essentially a highway is really any road.
And we got some
it's a pretty
numbers.
broad definition.
Yes, it's section 11.127. I'm just pulling it up here, pardon me, of the transportation of the highway means the entire width between the boundary lines of any way or of which any part is used by the public for vehicular travel, whether or not the way or thoroughfare has been dedicated to the public and accepted by any proper authority. And for purposes of the application of state law, the entire width between the boundary lines of any way or thoroughfare for purposes of vehicular travel on any property owned, leased, or controlled by the United States government and located in the state. So essentially what that means is any road that it's used for vehicular travel is considered a highway.
Right, but in the bill, it's defines it as identified in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan or the Vision Zero Plan. Those are the roads, I think, Delegate Hill, that this would apply to. Is that correct?
That and Route 1.
And Route 1, right?
And-
So if the county could give us a map, just showing us which roads are in those two plans, that could be helpful. And just to follow up on my original question, Mr. Chair, I guess it would be helpful to see whether or not the revenues have increased or decreased since we installed the school cameras. What we're hearing from Baltimore City is good in the sense that the speed cameras they placed on 83 have definitely reduced the speed and the accidents. But it's having the intended effect of changing people's behavior. But the revenue source is declining. So I just want to get a sense of, I'm not sure about the nexus between the school system and the speed cameras on these particular roads and or whether it's any kind of sustainable revenue source. I mean, anything helps, but I'd still like to see what those projections might look like or what they have been in the past for school cameras.
If I
So,
might comment,
Me-
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Arthur, so do you think we can get this kind of information next, if we defer the decision today for next Wednesday, can we get those information available for next meeting?
Yes, and I'll have to loop in our transportation department to be able to identify where those particular defined highways would be. But yes, I can't ensure that I can have someone from transportation next week, but I know that I will be able to have someone from HCPD to further answer questions.
Both the maps and the revenue will have been connected, right? That will give our delegation a better idea how everything works. And so Delegate Teresa.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the time to review the material we've received. It would also be helpful to the extent possible to get that material by Monday, if it's possible, so that we can take a look at it before the hearing. I mean, for this meeting. But I did want to point out, as somebody who was on the county council when we approved the original program, that one of the reasons we did mobile cameras is because they're expensive, and it would be it allowed us to cover more roadways to have them moving around. So just wanted to point that out in terms of whatever decision we make on that piece.
Thank you, Delegate. So Delegate Hill.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to pick up a couple of Delegate Watson's points. So because we're talking about fines designed to change behavior, meaning we're hoping that that the speed cameras will disincentivize people from speeding in these zones. This is a program that we would hope would eventually put itself out of business, right? If we're successful in changing behavior, if people are aware that, as they come through the zones, they're just gonna not speed, and that's the goal. So I think she's correct that if this were to work well, although you could, move them to other locations, we would expect that the revenues would decrease over time. I think the second thing is we've had some discussions, I've had offline discussions with a number of members about the importance of having a nexus between the revenue source and how the money's being used. And I completely buy into that when we're talking about fees, taxes, those kinds of things, which we're leveling, you know, from constituents, from citizens, from residents, and trying to justify, you know, why we're asking to take more money from them, right? And we want to justify what the use of that is. I think that when we're talking about fines, I think it's a little bit different, and the need for a nexus, at least for me, is not as strong, because fines are for behavior, not just because you happen to live somewhere. So you don't have to get a fine. And in this case, you don't speed, you don't get a fine. We don't need to, in my opinion, have that same nexus between, you know, what the violation is and how we're using the money. The goal is to change behavior. There is this is sort of found money. We're not shifting it from somewhere else. We have a clear need in the county that we've been struggling with for well over 10 years to find a way to address deferred maintenance. And at some point, if we were to get caught up, hopefully then be able to put a structure in place to prevent that list from regrowing. And I do think that Delegate Feldmark's point about we have other needs, and many of the state highway infrastructure improvement plans had to be deferred because the state money and the federal money coming has not been short. So to try and say that that could be addressed too, I get that. I don't think that it's important that the nexus be there, but I understand that there's a new revenue source and there can be discussion about where would that best be, you know, allocated. And I guess for me, although I have no objection to sharing it, we have, although there have been
Thank you,
issues-
Dr. Hill.
let me finish.
Sure.
Although there have been issues with finding the money to do these highway improvements, it is not the same degree of issue as we've had with finding a source for deferred maintenance on our schools.
Thank you, Delegate Hill. I think since we have some difference about our amendments and we're waiting for some new information, we're keep like close discussion for this HOCO 925. We're going to have a new session, talk about this and vote on that. So we're moving to next bill, HOCO 1025. And this the bill, I have an amendment for this bill for the school calendar. So my amendment is change the implementation date.
Can you discuss the bill before you talk about the amendments?
Sure. So this bill, HOCO 1025, is mandate the school system close the school for students on 5 holidays and Lunar New Year and Diwali, Eid, and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So that's the original bill. And then there are 2 amendments, one amendment from myself, then another amendment from Delegate Feldmark. So my amendment is based on a lot of feedback from the school system and from the community. So I have both bills proposed for Montgomery County and Howard County. So the amendment, so Mr. I think he's here, right? Is he still here? Our council is still here? Okay, yeah. So Mr. Moriarty, so this is my amendment. So change the school closing for the whole county, we change to for students only. So if the school decide to close school for faculty, they have the freedom to do that. Then the implementation date goes to 26, 27, not next year, but next year. And then I think that's the both amendment. So that kind of remove a lot of concern from the school system and the other communities. Okay, Delegate Teresa, you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to make a point about pedestrian safety, which the funds are.
No, we're moving to next bill now.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Okay.
No, I don't have a question about this one.
Okay, and Delegate Watson.
Yes, Delegate Wu,
when you talked with the school system and made these changes,
Mhm.
did you, do these changes extend the school year at all?
No, it does not. So basically, the school will continue use a professional learning day or wellness day to do that. So it's just codify what they're doing right now.
Okay, so that was my next question. The school system's already doing this?
Yes, yes. But every year they have a calendar committee to talk about this, and this why, and that discussion actually consumed a lot of time for the calendar committee. By doing this, I think it's really simplified the process, make everything much easier.
Okay, and do we have, I think we have testimony from the Board of Ed supporting this, correct?
I think not, because this is the local issue. They don't want the state mess up with that.
Could we ask the Board of Ed member that might be here or the
Yeah.
chair?
So, Ms. Mallow, would you mind, or other, or superintendent?
Superintendent,
Hi, this is Jen Mallow. I'm sorry, I'm driving, so I'm not able to turn on my
Okay.
camera. So the board's position on this bill was to oppose, given that it should be a locally decided issue, and depending on the outcome of the existing calendar committee, even with the amendments, this denies the jurisdictional authority of the school board in favor of it being legislated from above, as well as the impact. It mandates a certain set of cultures and or religions that have off days rather than focusing on operational issues and the best placement for professional development. This puts a burden on the school system or on the school board in approving a calendar that we have zero flexibility in that these days would be required to be off rather than determined based on local conditions and or operational need.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Mallow, in the past few years, have you been able to provide these days off for students?
We have been. The board has approved calendars. We have moved from a 1-year approval of calendar to 2 years ahead of time, and we have been able to accommodate this within our existing structure.
Okay, and my last question is for either you, Ms. Mallow, or Dr. Wu. Is this list of holidays completely inclusive of the holidays that our students, or the high holidays that our students celebrate across the county, or are we leaving any out?
This is certainly a limited list. We have students that may be Zoroastrian and they celebrate other holidays. This is not a comprehensive list. This is limited to two Jewish holidays, the two highest Jewish holidays that were determined in the 1970s to have an operational impact. It includes 1 and or 2 Muslim holidays or Islamic holidays, and those are Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr, depending on where they fall within the school calendar. And then it includes Diwali, which is a not inclusive of the Asian subcontinent, but of a subset of Indian believers. And I believe it's more linked culturally, but it is linked to, I believe, the Hindu religion. And then the Lunar New Year is linked to most Asian cultures, but not all. but predominantly Chinese. So there are certainly other Eastern religions. There are other major religions and practices that are not included in this list. And it would be impossible to be inclusive of all religions and all cultural holidays, which is why we currently use the 3 allowable days for religious observances that are not part of our calendar that can be counted as excused absences.
And just to follow up on your operational calculation in the 70s on the Jewish holidays, I'm assuming that what you mean is that there was a percentage of absences or something that stated that operationally it made more sense. Okay, so Dr. Wu,
between the population of the teachers and the students, the population percentage was high enough to impact delivery of instructional services.
Okay, and did we do those calculations on these holidays, Dr. Wu?
We had a survey, I think, several years ago on students, and definitely there are new data available from the school system.
So do we know the percentage of teachers and students that would celebrate these holidays and whether or not that is an operational burden on the school system? Or maybe the school system is better off answering that question.
We don't have great data on that front because we don't ask people to disclose religion or or that particular data point. As Dr. Wu mentioned, there was a survey conducted, but it was voluntary. And so we don't have great data to suggest that. We try to look at absentee data on holidays, but it's been some time since we've even opened on those holidays. So it's tough to get data that would suggest for any of these holidays, those that have been traditionally off for decades and those that have recently been worked through the calendar process kind of inform the decision.
Okay, so
yeah, I think I can add it.
Hold on, and so Delegate Watson, do you have other questions?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, so we have 2 board members raised their hands. So Delegate Fulmer, do you want to speak first, or I can ask both school board members to answer?
If they'd like to speak to the topic at hand, that's
okay. Ms.
fine.
McCoy, you can go ahead.
Yes, I believe as a school system that our decisions about holidays and that sort of thing is outside of our purview. And I believe that our decisions need to be left in the realm of operational impact. And as Mr. Barnes was sharing, we don't have the data. And so I would suggest that we make the effort to gather the data. And I guess since we have given those some holidays in the calendar, it would be very difficult to assess it at this point in time. But to pick and choose holidays, to me, is outside of our purview. Our purview is educating students. And if we want to understand cultural holidays and that sort of thing, absolutely, we should incorporate that into our curriculum. But when it comes to picking and choosing, I think we're on a slippery slope. That's my personal opinion. Since we have the 3 allowable days, I think helping staff to recognize that around particular holidays, to not give assessments and that sort of thing, to be culturally sensitive. But I think it's a slippery slope. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Chen.
Hello, thank you. I think I just try to answer a question of Delegate Watson. I think just like Bill mentioned, we may not have a direct data because we cannot ask people's religion. But if you look at the student body demographic and also the survey, I think based on the estimation, we can understand for the major 4 groups we are mentioning here, Jewish group, and Indian American and the East Asian Americans and also Muslim Americans, the population is about 30% roughly. You talk about 15,000 or 20,000 students out of the 57 students. It's impacted by those observed as holidays. And I think the bill, I think it's in some way it's trying to codify what are the practice we have now. Just give you background, back to the 1979, we closed the schools for Jewish to holidays based on the staff absentee, staff leaving to celebrate the impact on the operation. And then 2016, through the committee, calendar committee, I also worked in that committee before, we tried to use the Professional Learning Day to accommodate 3 major holidays, the Diwali, Lunar New Year, and the Eid. And we continue to practice since then. But I can tell you, it's a lot of work on the calendar committee. Every year, the same discussion coming up because of different people, same question, same issue. We probably spend over 60% of the time just try to discuss the same issue and again. The board try to address if it's a local issue, then the board should take action. But so far we haven't bear any fruits. And in last May, we tried to develop the calendar policy, but the policy coming up, I think, on the board feel like this is not a will of the board. So we basically just hold up. We didn't do any action moving forward. I think in the bill, I think people do have some concern about, close holidays for 6 days. But if you look at practically right now, we already have 2 days closed, right? Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And also this morning, I did use of the ChatGPT to check if we have 6 holidays how many of them could potentially landing in the weekdays. So I can share the data. I think let me check, Diwali, from the 2025 to 35, 11 years, it's 4 out of 11. It's on the weekend. And also for the Eid, al-Fitr, I think it's also 4 out of 11. It's land on the weekend. And Eid Adha, it's about, I think, 2 out of 11. And Yom Kippur, it's 4 out of 11. And Rosh Hashanah is 3 out of 11. And the Lunar New Year also 3 out of 11. So you look at it, and we are not talking about the holiday colliding with other school close and half days. So my estimate is just adding 2 days, which 2 days is student close only. We could use the Professional Learning Day, Wellness Day, whatever days we can accommodate. Basically, we continue the practice, but it's a safer, greater energy in the calendar community level. At the same time, really recognize our very diverse Howard County population. We talk about, I just mentioned about the students, it's 15,000 to the 20,000 students who observe those important holidays. And globally, you look at the combined, this holidays cover over 50% of global population. If we want to have a global citizenship, you have to know those holidays. And also we talk about some of the hate, some of the discrimination. Fundamentally, it's because you don't know the culture. Because of the difference, people assume, make assumption. And this really, it's a school's responsibility to educate the students and the communities using these holidays. It really is multiple benefits, personal see. And we haven't talked about a lot of diversity equity issue, but this is a diversity equity issue too. and inclusion.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, thank you. That's just my opinion. I think it's the bill really improve the efficiency of operation and reflect our diverse community. It's time to codify the practice.
Thank you,
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr.
thank you.
Wu. Thank you all the delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. And Delegate Fidelmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions, I guess, going back to, I think Ms. Mallow offered the first comments on behalf of the board. And I guess I just wanted to clarify with Delegate Wu's proposed amendment, I believe the bill requires what has been existing practice. Are we in agreement on that? Yes, okay, I see a nod. And so, it sounds to me like the objection is one of sort of principle of the board's autonomy to make these decisions, right? And I understand the concern that was raised that this may not be an exhaustive list, and so it's picking and choosing certain religions and cultures. And I guess I'd like to clarify which religions and cultures have been picked and chosen so far in existing statute.
So, Mr.
Would you like me to address that? This is Jen Mallow.
Sure. I mean, which religions and cultures have we already selected in existing statute for required holidays?
The existing statute is state holidays.
Yes.
So those would be Eurocentric Christian holidays. The only, so.
Specifically Christmas Eve, Christmas, the Friday before Easter, and the Monday after Easter. Those are the religious holidays required, correct?
So I don't think for school system, I think that the required days off, Christmas Eve is not required off.
It is by statute.
Okay, then it's Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
And everything through January 1st.
Yes.
And the
that's
Friday
not-
before Easter and the Monday after Easter.
I'm looking right at it. That's true.
Okay, so we have already picked. We have already chosen. This is about being more inclusive in the choices we make. And I think with the amendment that Delegate Wu has offered, I would hope that we can respect all of our students enough to offer them this recognition.
Thank you, Delegate Fidelmark. And Chair Atterbury?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple of quick comments. First, I'm not sure that all of these holidays match up with the days we have off. I was just trying to do a quick check on my own personal calendar because I have the school calendar downloaded on my phone, and I'm not sure it matches up. So I think we need to take a look at that. But just some comments. I'm hearing a lot of words like, you know, it's our job to focus on operational needs, and, you know, it's operational burden. But I think I think that's short-sighted. You know, this is 2025, and our job is to make sure that our children feel welcome and that they feel included in our schools. And that's how I see my job. And I would hope that's how all of you see your job as well. There was also conversation that this would take away local control. Well, this delegation is a local body, so it's not necessarily fully taking away local control, but what it is, and I understand is not necessarily appreciated, is taking the decision out of the school board. But I think that what has happened here is that this decision has just been kicked down. We're kicking the can down the road. We're just kicking it down the road. And so a significant number of people came out to our public hearing, significant. and asked for this. And so I think it will be doing them a disservice for this body, meaning the delegation, to not address it. You know, I was born and raised in Howard County, having a big birthday in June. And I remember growing up going to 13 bar and bar mitzvahs and seeing that population. Now our population in the county is changing, and we need to be welcoming of those folks and those kids as well. So I would hope that we take a serious look at this and that there's movement on this year. And Delegate Wu, I appreciate the legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Atterbury. So we have School Board Member Ms. Chamberlain.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that the board discussion about this wasn't so much as to say don't take this power away from us. It was that we wanted to be able to be more nimble to respond to other changes in the demographics in the county as they happened, and keep tabs on it and respond to the holidays that way, rather than have it at the state level. But I agree that these holidays are important and they should be the ones we choose. But the only question for the board was, are we going to be able to respond to changes in our county over the years if our holidays are dictated to us already? But that's up to you guys. I mean, I don't have a horrible objection to celebrating and observing these holidays, and I don't think anybody on the board did. We just wanted to be able to respond if the demographics change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. And so we are past 9. I just want anybody, if you want to just make a comment, be brief, and we have other bills to discuss as well. Thank you. And Ms. McCoy.
Yes, I am, if maybe I wasn't heard, but I believe in education. And just like with Martin Luther King Day, I would rather have students in school learning about Martin Luther King rather than taking a day off. So I'm about educating our students and making them culturally aware of the different cultures that we have in our schools and around the world. So it's not about just the operational effort, but I believe, and if there's a significant number of students, yes, but I believe that our local school system should make that determination, just as Ms. Chambly said, so that we can be a little bit more flexible about how we to adjust to the demographic changes in our county and not be bound by a law from the state that would dictate which holidays would be counted. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Hill.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the school board members, and I was listening to what Member Chen was saying about the calendar. Does the board not have the ability to have calendar decisions march out for a longer period of time? Say you make a calendar decision that these are going to be included for the next 5 years, not year after year. And could you all decide to make these permanent yourselves, as opposed to discussing it every year? Just asking about process.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if I can answer. Basically, we try to work on parallel well, and I think that's what we try to form a subcommittee to review that as well. I think it's can do the parallel. I think a delegate the bill really here try to codify the current practice, and I think to answer Mr. McCoy's questions, it really, the holidays depends on the community. Some of the holidays, that's a twofold. One is the education purpose. I think it's Mr. McCoy definitely right on to how do we, educate the community to get to know the culture. But the other things, we got to respect the community. They want to celebrate within the community to enjoy the time and the family, almost like like Christmas and Thanksgiving. If, for example, the Lunar New Year is coming up very quickly, typically it's a family unit. The family don't want to go to school. That's also another thing.
Right.
So it's important.
So we heard a lot of, we heard a lot of testimony about the importance of not feeling like you're missing out on school, but yet you can enjoy, and I'm very sensitive. I just want to know, I mean, there's some complaint and I think it's valid about us sort of imposing on the school system, which as Chair Atterbury points out, we do all the time. That's part of our job. But I guess my question is, could you not come up with a policy that said that if you include a holiday for 5 years or 6 years, that then becomes a permanent one, and you're not going to have a debate about it anymore unless there's a debate about taking it out? I mean, and that would save us, you know, if part of the issue is that why is the local delegation imposing this? As I'm asking, can you guys come up with a policy so that in the future these things can be handled in a way that you would find more acceptable, because you would be doing it when you find that you're repeatedly including, that the demographics have shifted enough that for X number of years, you're doing something and maybe it should become permanent. That's all I'm asking. Do you have that ability?
I think it's so far we didn't take any action. We just follow the day year by year. We could, I mean, possibilities are there. So I think we will take your idea and start to work in that direction, see if it's made to work. But you know, it's a 7 board member plus the student member, and we will have a discussion. But I think it's not in contradictory with the delegation's decision as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chen, for answering that. I think the school board can make something the same with the delegation. We can make that as well. So, and Delegate Feldmark, do you want to talk about anything else or about your amendment?
Well, that was what I was going to ask, Mr. Chair, if I could just quickly address that. I mean, we're having some good substantive conversation, and my amendment is actually very technical, but I did want to just mention it. So basically, in reading this bill, I recognize that specifically on page 4 in lines 5 and 6, when it says, if any of the following holidays begin on a weekday. And as you know, Jewish holidays begin the evening before. And so when the holiday begins is not necessarily the weekday we want to be paying attention to. So I discussed that with Mr. Moriarty in terms of the best way to address it. And that whole introductory phrase, if any of the following holidays begin on a weekday, is unnecessary. So the amendment simply removes it.
Thank you, Delegate Feldmark. And so, Delegate Watson?
Yes, briefly, why I struggle with this is exactly because of the Board of Education's autonomy from the state. While we do have the authority to do this, so does the Board of Education. And the Board of Education could very simply make a policy that says these days will be in our policy, these days will be off. And it sounds like they went through a calendar policy, but perhaps that's not in the calendar policy, but they could do that. That's number one. Number two, I think both Delegate Feldmark and Delegate Atterbury spoke very eloquently about the need for inclusion, the need for us all to make everyone welcome in our schools. And I agree with that. But what I'm struggling is with, we're choosing not to do it for the entire population. We're choosing just to do it for the students. So if we believe all of that, why wouldn't we do this for the educational professionals that are still going to have to work while the students are off for Lunar New Year? Their parents may not be. So I think I'm struggling with the inconsistencies a little bit in our discussion and the bill in general. But I think there are very good arguments on that everyone has done a really good job bringing those out.
Sure, thank you, Delegate Watson. And Delegate Hill.
Yeah, on Delegate Feldmark's amendment, I thought the purpose of that language was to Member Chen's point that that this would not be impactful if a holiday fell on the weekend. To your point that the Jewish holidays start at sunset, if I'm culturally correct, I'm not sure that removing that may take care of that piece, but I think it doesn't address, I think, what the original bill was, that if it falls on a weekend, you don't have to close the school. So is there another way to phrase that, or is that not am I wrong about my interpretation of why if any of the following begins on a weekday, or is there a way to talk about
Delegate Hill, you're right. Yeah, so we don't want to close school if it's for the holiday, right? At weekend. So that's the reason like we don't close like for 6 days at all, because some holiday actually is at weekend, then we don't need to close school. Then some of the actually during summer, not a school like calendar, so you don't need to close school. So that's the reason. We don't close like for six days. We at the most like four of those 6.
And so Delegate Feldmark's amendment would cancel that. I think there's something in between that can be done to address both concerns. That's my point.
So if I may, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
Yeah. Delegate
So if you look at the way the bill is currently drafted, if any of the following holidays begin on a weekday, only applies to number 1. Right? If you look at this construction. Number 2, Yom Kippur, it doesn't say that. Right? So it's the schools, if schools are already closed because it's a weekend, then it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Just like if, right? So there's no difference in how we have to word this for Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, right?
Yeah, thank
But
you.
we have that if it begins on a weekday, applies to Diwali, Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr, Lunar New Year, and Rosh Hashanah, but not to Yom Kippur. So it's either missing from one or it's unnecessary in the other. And in discussing it with Mr. Moriarty, it's unnecessary. If it's not a weekday, schools are not open.
Okay. And Dr. Chen?
Yeah, I just try to speak from an individual, try to answer questions, Delegate Watson. I think typically staff, they can take their day off. So, if the holiday, they can take off and either personal day or the vacation. But as students, they have to go to school, even it's a floating holiday, they still like a sick leave. They still need to make a homework. That's really the difficult piece and the different from the staff. So I just want to add, thank you.
Thank you. And Delegate Ziegler.
I'm sorry, I was trying to lower my hand. I was going to say exactly what Dr. Chen said.
Okay. So I don't see other hands raised, and we have another bill to discuss. We'll come back. I think let's see how we work the difference together, and then we have different amendment. Let's go to the next bill, HOCO 1525. Delegate Chair Atterbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this bill asks that the school board do an audit of their school safety infrastructure, and in particular, study weapons detection, AI weapons detection, has some reporting requirements. And, essentially, in my role as chair of Ways and Means, I've met with a lot of groups that do this new type of weapons detection. I think Baltimore County already does it, and I believe one other jurisdiction, which is escaping me. We had about 12 people come in, testify in support of it, 2 opposed. And I think for the same reason as I haven't talked to anybody from the school board or the school administration about the bill, but I've taken a look at their opposition, which I think essentially is, we don't want you telling us what to do, again, like the other bill, and the cost of any measures that they deem that they should take. I would just suggest that the bill isn't saying that you have to take these measures. It's look at what we can do. What is the realm of possibilities? As we all know, school safety is an issue. And if you have a child in the school, it's, I think, something that you are constantly worried about. So that's essentially what the bill does.
Thank you, Chair. So, Ms. Chamberlain?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might have surprised a lot of you when I voted against this bill, and I did it for 2 reasons. One is if this study identifies some infrastructure we can put in, first of all, I think that money could be better spent. It's, if money were no object, that would be fine. Second of all, we're already not paying for the infrastructure we already have. So any new system would burden us with more maintenance costs. But the main reason I voted against it was I went through this as a federal government employee after the Oklahoma bombing and 9/11. They turned my workplace into a bunker. We called it the bunker. And the guard at the arm at the garage broke in the down position every day. Nobody could get out, so they ended up having to just leave it broken in the up position. The lines to get in were so long and so difficult that they just gave up. Half of the places we walked through were not working, and it took too long to get inside, so they gave up and they only required visitors to go through. Well, I was a supervisor. My biggest danger is not a visitor. My biggest danger is a coworker who is able to walk right through. So I found them to create this feeling that you're in a bunker and you're not necessarily any safer, and it's not working most of the time. And I would have liked to see the money spent on something else. And we were adults, so we didn't necessarily take this as a sign of how fearful we should be. But I think kids would, being in a bunker would affect them even more. And I know technology has gotten better since then, and maybe it could be seamless, but I don't think we're anywhere near that yet. And I would rather not spend money planning on infrastructure that we're not going to fund to keep working. And there's no guarantee that students will be any safer.
Thank you.
That was my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. I think this is the study, right? It does not ask you or us to install this metal detector at all, right? So I just want to mention that. Okay, Dr. Chen.
Yeah, I think Ms. Chapley already touched a lot of points. I think one of the discussion is related to the portables we have. Even we have the metal detector at the main entrance, it's just a lot of loopholes that can get around. You know, student can get inside, open the door, pop the door, and then there's a lot of people going to the portables. It's very frequent. So I don't know how can we cover that unless we address the portable classroom. Right now, it seems not enough to just narrow down to the metal detector. But I agree, the safety, I think probably we need to cast a big net, and we let the superintendent do the research, not necessarily mandated by the law, but the worker group, they can explore all the options to find what's most cost-effective, smarter way to have safety measures. But I appreciate the bill. Thank you.
Delegate Hill.
Yeah, this question is for the bill sponsor, Chair Atterbury. If I'm reading this correctly, there's sort of two parts. One is sort of what I would assume is a review of, the current information, what other jurisdictions are doing, and what seems to do well. Then there's the audit of our system. What I don't see, and I don't know if it's deliberately left out or you'd have any opposite, I don't see anything in the study that talks about also reporting on negatives to the methods, like what are the psychological, emotional, it's telling us what we can do, but it doesn't ask why we might not do it. Or is that something you would entertain, or is that not something? Because a lot of this just seems like it's known, right? We kind of know what's out there. So just when you say study and you include those two pieces, I guess that's the question, and we don't talk about negative mitigating impacts of these various methods.
So thank you for the question. I think in the study, in my mind, I meant like that was part of the study, but if you wanted to call that out, in the language of the statute, I have no problem with that. To me, this would be an audit of positive and the negative, why we wouldn't do something, why we would do something. And just to comment on some of the things that have been said, I mean, You know, no one's talking about making schools bunkers. This legislation doesn't say that any particular method has to be done. It's saying, take a look at all the methods. And I think everyone keeps mentioning metal detectors. There's this huge new technology out there, AI detection, where they can use thermal whatever, see where, you know, drugs are in a school, see where a weapon is in the school. They can tell you when a camera is down. I mean, there's all these things out there. They can immediately communicate with, you know, the police or whoever the school designates to let folks know that there's an emergency. You can do automatic, you know, locking of doors. So it's just taking a look at all these new things and seeing what are the possibilities as we keep having instances in schools. And we have instances in our Howard County Public Schools. So.
And then my follow-up, Mr. Chair, would be to if the superintendent is still on, or someone I'm interested in this kind of overall survey. Does the school system on an ongoing basis and from the conferences that they attend discuss evolving technology, and are these things that they learn about routinely? And so it's just a matter of reporting publicly, you know, what they're hearing about in other places, or is this not a topic that they are in constant review and discussion of?
Mr. Brown or Mr. Barnes? Any of
Yes,
you?
thank you, Chair, and thank you, Delegate Hill, for the question. We are in constant review and audit of buildings. And safety and security has been a priority since I took over formally in July. We started retraining, updating the emergency operations protocols, and making sure our school leaders and staff understood those and really just brought those and put some enhancements around it. We've seen for a few years since COVID a spike in students' behaviors, you know, troubling behaviors, and obviously we had a signature event with an arrest and a loaded weapon in a school in October that brought attention. So I meet regularly with our new director of safety and security and our new chief of schools. We meet with community members. We've assembled a community group, and you know, I have a list of technologies and their costs and what their pros and cons are, and that evolves. And we meet with vendors all the time. We don't publish that information. We don't want to give the playbook to those who are looking at our facilities, how to best operate on our vulnerabilities. And there's costs are significant, you know, and so when it came to what might we do, what move might we make, you know, experts, community experts, school leaders said, even if you have these technologies, you first need to have the human resource infrastructure to monitor and operate on these technologies. And so we are lagging behind in that space relative to our neighbors and those especially who are using new camera technology, which are less invasive and are attractive. They're not foolproof right now. We work with my counterparts in those districts that use those, and they have a number of concerns or failures, but those things I'm confident will work themselves out as we improve on the technologies. But the first move, and it's represented in my operating budget, is to start to bring up the human capital on this front, whether they go in the end as a security assistant, as it's proposed, that's the name of the thing we have now, or we talk about something different like a student engagement officer, student support and safety liaison, student engagement liaison, whatever the title. The first step forward for me, and it's to the tune of, you know, over $3 million, is to build up our human capital, to make our schools a little more secure, a little less open, and then simultaneously look for those technologies and work with delegation, county executive, to find out how we make secure funding for just cameras and door alarms, like those first $2 or $3 million that are needed, you know, based on my initial analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Delegate Watson. You're mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question was asking the superintendent what exactly they're doing now. Since we had the signature incident back in October, I believe, I was part of a small subset of this delegation that met with school system officials, including the safety and security officer. We learned about the plan of the superintendent to do the broad-based committee to look at some of these things.
yet I understand the need of the state delegation to want to nail down and make sure that these things are happening. I'd like to ask for an estimate of what this would cost, a study like this would cost. Ballpark. Anybody know?
Mr. Bond or Mr. Brown, do you have
I don't
any
have a sense
guess?
of it. I don't have a sense of it. I will say that the plan, because funding is always a challenge. Right now, we're working with our county council to redirect capital dollars to do a sufficiency study for all buildings, to think about not just the capital, comparing what the state has done for us in our building analysis with the like HVAC systems and operational systems, but also programmatic systems. The plan Mr. Brown shared was at that time, when somebody's in there, to include an analysis of and make this part of that study, so that we sort of get the bang for our buck. While people are in there looking around, let's really find someone who can look around at scale. And so that's how we were planning to do such a thing already. We're waiting for the approval of those shifts in dollars, and of course we got to procure a contractor. The cost on that one is about $2.5 million.
Okay, so that was my next question. Are you talking about the educational space adequacy assessment?
Yeah, we were also, yes, we were trying to get.
Okay, so my question was, could this be incorporated into that study? And you're saying yes.
Yes, that was our thinking.
And we do have a bond bill in to help pay for part of that study, which is $600,000.
Correct.
I mean, that sounds like a good solution to bring it all together. And I think, you don't have the funding outside of, you would have to come up with the funding within your own budget. This bill does not provide you with any funding. But if we were able to get that LBI in, we would at least be contributing towards that if you could incorporate it in that study.
Yes, I mean, that's how we were thinking about it outside of this legislation. Certainly, if the legislation's passed, this we'll have that infrastructure in place.
And last question, if you look at the bill, I mean, it might be helpful to know if there's anything you would include or add to the actual language in order to make it be in sync with what you're trying to do.
We certainly do that again. Yeah, working with our legislative staff member in our team.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bond, I have a question. So you're talking about $2.5 million, which I feel kind of, it's including the hardware, right? It's not just study itself. Study shouldn't cost $2.5 million, right?
But I have to, we're just using that number as comparative for other districts that have done sufficiency studies. And we hope not to use $2.5 million, but it has cost districts as much as that. And so, and this is not just the safety and security analysis. That would be different, probably would not cost $2.5 million. This is a deep and thorough sufficiency study for building both operational systems as well as programmatic decisions and solution recommendations that would assist the whole county in prioritizing building maintenance plans for the next 3, 4, 5 decades.
So this kind, I personally feel, right, that you talk about a much bigger, much broader, even like a capital project issue, right? This bill really focuses narrowly about the safety, maybe take advantage of some other counties doing, like Baltimore County. And as the chair Atterbury said, I feel we're kind of divert to the real issue we're talking about here. So,
Yeah.
Mr.
I would say I agree, and I think I was trying to be creative in a solution
Okay.
to address the concern. I don't think we have to do that. We could commission a separate study. We were trying to find an efficiency. I heard people, I heard board members and others express concerns about finances. We were just saying we're going to use these dollars anyway. Here's how we might include such a thing.
Sure. Okay, so this is not about efficiency or capital project. It's really just solely focused on the safety, use the new technology, right? So I just want to really highlight that. Mr. Brown?
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to provide some clarification. So the $2.5 million that we're requesting approval to transfer is actually to address two studies. We have our private-public partnership evaluation that we estimate will cost us around $500,000. Then the balance of the 2.5 will be for the space efficiency study. And since we're going to have facility planners, in our buildings, looking at how sufficient our buildings are, the scope includes an evaluation of building safety and security features. So
Okay.
that will be a part of the evaluation. And the LBI request that we have for the additional fiscal support is so that we can complete the study.
Thank you.
Right.
That's very clear. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that we have a couple of initiatives that we're moving forward so we can do the evaluation. And then in addition to that, there's the safety and security aspects of it that goes beyond the physical building, but it could be technology and some other resources that we need to, make sure that we are ensuring a safe environment. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So we're going to have a hard stop at 9:45 and Delegate Feldman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I want to just really quickly thank you, Mr. Brown, for your comments. But you mentioned a P3 evaluation study that we're spending $500,000 on, or the plan is to spend $500,000 on. So I would like to get some more information about that, and it doesn't have to be right now. If you can send us some details, I would like to understand what the plan is there. But I guess coming back to this bill, after getting the board's statement of opposition, I did reach out and had a conversation with the superintendent about the ongoing evaluation and reports that are already done and submitted to the Maryland Center for School Safety. I understand, and we get into sort of a delicate area here when we're talking about security and safety evaluations in information that needs to be treated carefully and confidentially. I would appreciate knowing more about that, and I had asked if I could get a copy of that report. It sounds like that probably isn't possible given the nature of the information, but I do believe that safety and security concerns are an acceptable reason to potentially meet in closed session. And I'm wondering if it might be helpful to get together with the school system in a closed session where some of these concerns could be discussed in more detail without the concern of discussing security details in public. So I just wanted to raise that to see if there's any interest. I personally think I would appreciate the more detailed information that you're not able to share in a public venue. So just wanted to float that idea.
Thank you, Delegate Feldman. Definitely we'll see whether we can make such meeting happening. I agree with you. It would be better if personally we have some better understanding of the issue. And okay, Delegate Watson.
I just wanted to focus on the reporting requirement of this bill along the lines of what the superintendent said. I'm not sure what information we can get. They would be providing information back to us and to the state superintendent of schools regarding the findings of this report in a manner that does not jeopardize school safety. So I guess we would have some information, but we certainly wouldn't have all of the information about what this study is producing. And I just don't know if that's helpful or not.
Okay. Delegate Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just really quickly, I want to go back to the 500,000 on a P3 study. which concerns
So
me.
can we put that, this is not for this topic?
Right, I don't want to discuss it. I just want to make sure that it's going to go to all of us, the
Okay.
information that we get. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, do you have other questions you want to address or other information we want to request? So make sure you share that with Musa and our administrator. And we're gonna have a new session next Wednesday morning. Mr. Delegate Feldmark.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I did not need to interrupt you, but I just wanted to, because I did join a few minutes late, I wanted to ask Mr.
yeah,
Dockery
yeah, right.
to record me in the affirmative for the votes I missed. Thank you.
Thank you. So Musa, please record. So you voted both yes to LBI and the first bill, right? Okay, Chair Atterbury.
I came in a little bit late, so I have the same request as Delegate Feldmark, if I could be recorded as yes as well
Okay.
for both votes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Jeffrey, did you carry that? Okay.
I did.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So, okay, I think we actually can close a few minutes earlier. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. This close today's discussion. Thank you.